Hi, everybody. Welcome to Big Easiest Ways to Wellness. I'm Dr. Holly McKenna, integrative psychiatrist. I'm here today with a very special guest, a fabulous therapist from here in New Orleans, Adam Rivas. We're here to talk about a couple of things. Today happens to be National Suicide Prevention Day. So we wanted to definitely bring some awareness there. Let folks know that they're not alone, that there's places to turn if you're feeling like you're getting hopeless and things just aren't looking good for you. Kind of along those lines, sometimes when things like this pandemic happen, we start falling into old habits, and one of those habits sometimes involves substances or addictive type of behaviors. And Adam happens to be very well equipped at dealing with these things. So I thought this would be a great conversation for us to have today, especially. So Adam, welcome.
Hey, thank you very much. And absolutely, I think it's a great topic. It's one that we really need to increase a lot of awareness on. People do need to be aware of their options. They hopefully people will seek out help and look to not take that path. I mean, suicide is the word, the phrase for it. It's a temporary, a permanent solution for a temporary problem. And a lot of times, a lot of lives could be saved if people just talk about how they feel and look to mental health professionals or any support group really to try to get some better understanding on that. And it also has a particular bearing on people who have substance abuse and addictions issues, which is my specialty in counseling. It's something I've been working with for a long time. Both topics are very near and dear to me, and I spend a lot of time working with people with those issues. So it's good that we have a day like this, and it's good that we have a medium and a platform and an ability to get word out to people like we are right now, so that more people could be helped.
Yeah, I was looking at the statistics when looking at suicide, and it's one of the leading causes of death in people from like the older teens into like early adulthood subset. And men that are like in at least my age range in the 40s into young 60s, that's one of the leading groups for completed suicides. And so, I've had a lot of friends who, even in the past year, have posted about losing loved ones to suicide. And oftentimes they feel shocked because they didn't realize what was happening, because it's real easy for folks to maybe put on a facade, especially in social media, right? Like we don't like to air our dirty laundry. So, something I think that's important for people to think about and know is that it's okay to ask people if they're feeling like killing themselves. Like that's not a taboo thing to do. That's not going to make someone want to suicide or give them that idea. Because usually if someone is on that path, they've been thinking about it for a while, right?
For sure. And I mean, that's, some of the things you want to look for is like changes in attitude. Do people all of a sudden do kind of the opposite of what they've always done? Like one of the things that I've noticed with clients over the years is that they go from being maybe they're always depressed and all of a sudden they're fine. And like, it's scary. Like they're all of a sudden fine. Like they haven't done anything, but everything's right in the world. And there's no way for them to kind of qualify why that is what it is. They just, I'm okay now. So, well, why are you okay? And that can lead to a number of answers. Suicide, not always it. Or also there's some behaviors people take on that are very interesting. I met a gentleman one time I was counseling who, he had immigrated here, bought a home, refurbished it. He was a carpenter from Europe, and he had some amazing skills. And I complimented him on his house. And he was like, well, you can have it. And I was like, what? And he really wanted to give me his house. I'm like, no. And as I dug deeper, we got into the realm of, he wanted to kill himself and had tried previous, which is one of the reasons that he was seeing me. I was seeing him for alcoholism at the time. But it's things like that you should look for in folks, like what's going on that doesn't fit the normal. And there's definitely no taboo about asking people, because it's for their safety and your concern, and generally out of caring. Like, is something going on that I need to know about? Can I help? What can I do to help you out? And it works out well a lot of times when we do that, because most people want to talk about their issues and problems. They just don't have the ability to do so because they don't think anybody wants to hear it.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I think
Yeah.
that's kind of the big culprit here is it's like, hey man, how are you doing? And then like, well, let me tell you for real. It's like, no. Like I just meant, how are you doing? But a lot of times people want to tell you how they're doing. And if we just listen, I think a lot of people would probably do a lot better.
Oh, absolutely. You touched on something that I think is really important. A big risk factor for suicide is actually that feeling of loneliness, feeling isolated, feeling like there's nowhere to turn, feeling like no one cares. And also like your brain, like you mentioned, like your brain kind of shift into just trying to get out of this feeling awful. And the solution, as you said, is something that's permanent to something that if we are able to find a way to live through it is going to be temporary.
Absolutely.
And so really just opening the dialogue and allowing people to feel heard is a huge way to help someone get out of that rut. And it's not as scary as it might feel for someone who's not used to dealing with that.
Sure. And I think that's one of the big things is that with any topic, I've been a counselor for a number of years. I started out as a tech at a psychiatric hospital, kind of worked my way all the way up to where I'm at now. Now I work in a rehab facility. And I think one of the things there is that when people do start to tell you what's going on with them is not to judge them. And a lot of times people don't want to come out with, well, I'm an alcoholic or I'm addicted to crack or I want to kill myself, because when you say that to somebody, they all of a sudden are like, oh, you smoke crack, right? Like it paints a picture in your head that isn't necessarily true. It's usually fueled by stereotypes. And then the person admitting what's going on often feels very judged, and that makes them kind of wall themselves off even more and really reinforces continuing the behavior or not sharing it and not getting any help. And stigma is a simple way to put it. They often get stigmatized. And you have to be very careful of that, because if you ask the question, hey, do you feel like killing yourself? And someone says, yeah, the last thing you want to do is go, oh my God, like, just talk to them like you would anybody else. And that really helps, goes a long way.
Yeah. And so folks have probably heard, I'm going to pull it up here just so folks can see the suicide prevention hotline. So this number is one that folks can call 24/7 if they're having thoughts of hurting themselves, even if they're just having a rough go of it. These are trained counselors that can talk to you about ways to get out of that. If you happen to be a veteran, you can call that same number and press 1, and then that actually links veterans with folks who have access to their VA file and are able to let their local VA know that they're having a hard time. But something else that people may not know about this line is that family members can call, or friends, if they're unsure about what to do, because these are also folks who can help you access what's available locally or help you problem solve about next steps for a loved one. So that's something to also consider, is that phone number. It's just that 1-800-273-TALK. And, or it's just suicide prevention hotline. Any of those things, if you Google that, it'll come up for you. That's a great resource for any folks that are having a hard time. Yeah, you mentioned the substance use. It's interesting because there's, we see folks who, especially at times like this, stress can really cause a lot of changes in your brain. And sometimes folks have a genetic predisposition to substance use, like they know about it. Like maybe I have a grandfather who liked his alcohol. So I happen to know that that's something that's, along my genetic line, or maybe a parent or, a sibling. Sometimes folks, though, don't necessarily, either they don't know their background or they don't have a known family history. Doesn't mean it wasn't there, but it's not talked about. But a stress like this can cause changes in how your genes are expressed and can lead to, behaviors that maybe aren't so healthy. Overindulgence of whatever kind. Have you been seeing more of that in your practice?
Absolutely. I have my own practice in the evenings. I work in a drug and alcohol rehab facility during the daytime, both in New Orleans. And I can tell you that enrollment for substance abuse treatment is up. And normally it doesn't always start off like that. A lot of people know what their issue is. Some people don't. Usually I find that substance abuse, unless it's like brought on by genetics, is pretty much a secondary thing. Generally, there's some anxiety or depression or something else going on reason why somebody is drinking or using, you might say. But ever since the pandemic hit, like the numbers of people coming in are skyrocketing because of a number of reasons. Handling the stress of it. I mean, this is an unimaginable scenario that hasn't happened in our country in over a century. So no one has any relevance or way to deal with that. There's not a lot of precedent set in how the government should handle things, or the city, or whomever, even just your boss in the local job. And so a lot of people are feeling that stress. Unemployment rates are high. People who were once very comfortable are no longer are, because their money is not coming in. And I mean, I happen to be a healthcare worker, so I'm doing okay. I mean, I'm still working, but there are many, many people out there who are not. And that's causing a lot of folks to reach out to some unhealthy methods to cope. Other folks from different stratas, socioeconomically speaking, maybe they were already on the street, and now there's no people going by to give them change. There's nobody handling cash. There's no quick job that they can go get. The restaurant industry is shut down. There's nothing. There's no tourists coming in town to fuel a lot of that lifestyle and how they acquire their money hustling on the street. And so we see more and more people coming in for substance abuse treatment as a result, either because this has become their new norm and their new coping mechanism, or because it's exacerbated their existing condition. And it's something to see. I mean, I spent, I should say, with my group from, I'd say, February until June. And I have groups that cycle every 3-4 months of people, different clients come in and out. But all we did was talk about the pandemic and what it was like. And then, just trying to tackle the unknowns of understanding for some people. Like I'm educated in biology and anatomy and counseling and all this stuff, but a lot of people are not. So trying to explain the way a virus works for some people is very, very unnerving. And trying to, get them to understand, hey, wearing a mask does work. By the way, this is nice to actually talk to someone this long without a mask. But, it's just little things like that. And like I said, the numbers are definitely going up because of what's going on. And, the success rates are not what you would hope they would be as a result. The pandemic's even influencing that to a degree that people are coming into treatment more and more and more. But then when you leave treatment, you still don't have a job. You no longer have health care. You still don't have any money. There is no job to go get. There's no place else for you to go after you've been with me for 3 or 4 months. So now you're back on the street, or you're back into an unhealthy situation that you previously left, and you can't get a leg up because there's not an Oxford House or a halfway house, and you can't get a leg up because the normal methods for us to help people transition through to what they need are not altogether open. Mm-hmm. And so relapse rates, recidivism is very high right now, even bordering into death rates with overdoses. I mean, I sadly, I just added a name to the list of clients that I've met over the years who, laid a girl overdose the other night. And it wouldn't surprise me if it was related to this. So yeah, what you're talking about it's a very real number, and it's systemically affecting people in my field to a high level.
Yeah, so it's really, I think it's for folks who are struggling with this, it's important to reach out to folks like yourself, reach out to organizations like AA, NA, the folks that are able to maybe add some structure to your day, because something that we see with folks coming out of addiction treatment is that, like you said, they go back to wherever they had started, and now you're trying to create a lifestyle without the use of whatever kind of brought you into your treatment, whether it be a substance or alcohol or what have you. So trying to replace that with something that's healthier and that's going to serve you in a positive way is super important. And as you said, with the pandemic, some things are less available, but there are other ways to kind of think about how to structure your day, whether it be doing virtual meetings, because those are available. Some of the meetings now are starting to reopen. When I was looking, it looks like in the past few weeks, some have started reopening with just some added social distancing, I'm guessing with less people in the meetings.
Yeah.
But, kind of looking for that, looking for virtual support. And again, like reaching out for folks like yourself who are skilled in working with folks with substance issues or alcohol or addiction, and finding a way to fill your day with things that are healthier.
Yeah. It's the resources. I mean, like I see people across a spectrum from, socioeconomically, they're doing really well to living on the street.
Mm-hmm.
And so the resources for recovery, they're there. It's just that it's hard for different strata to get some of them. Like virtual meetings work really well for a lot of middle class people who have internet. Right. But then there's a certain population I work with daily at my current employer where there aren't any meetings for them to go to. Now we do have it here because they're with us here, but if they were on their own, they don't have the internet, which I mean, really at this point ought to just be a utility. But that's a whole other talk show for another day. But what you're saying about the meetings, though, that is true. They are reopening. I've heard some places are now doing like outdoor meetings where they're setting out the tables and stuff out in the parking lots and kind of trying to socially distance people, things of that nature, because they realize that they have to have this and that they're trying to find a way. It is kind of, the city does kind of give that a hard time because it's a gathering of so many people at once, and so it's like this really fine line that people are trying to walk right now to get those supports and stuff, and they're finding it. I mean, it's the good thing about substance abuse is that if you really want to be in recovery, you're going to find a way to get into recovery. There are a lot of resources to be had, but the pandemic isn't making things any easier on people by any stretch of the means,
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely times that we're not used to, times that we're figuring out as we go along. And I think what's most important is that folks who are dealing with these things realize they're not alone and they don't have to be alone. And there are folks who want to help them. We see our colleagues, trying to figure out ways to make things happen, trying to figure out like folks that like yourself who are working with populations who need that face-to-face, finding ways to make it happen. But if you don't ask, you're not going to know about it. So definitely it's important for folks to reach out and see what help is there, because there's definitely stuff available.
Yeah. I mean, I can say that in the city of New Orleans. Am I allowed to say who I work for during the daytime? Is that okay? Okay. I'm just sure. I'm making sure. I work for Odyssey House down in New Orleans, and so we have a lot. Like, if anybody is looking for resources for people that they know, or you're watching this and you need help, we have a lot of availability of those services. Like, we do have the detox, we do have a residential facility. I work in a long-term facility, meaning that instead of being 28 days, I'm going to work with you for like 3 to 6 months. People like myself, there's a ton of counselors out there that will work on a sliding scale and work with Medicaid and work with various insurances to try to be able to deliver services to people. And I mentioned Odyssey House because, again, a lot of folks who have access to healthcare and insurance and have a decent wage that they live on, stuff like that, they know that they can call the 1-800 number on the back of the card. They're going to find somebody.
Right.
But a lot of the folks who can't find it are the ones who really need to. And, so there is availability of other resources too. And there's other places besides us. I mean, there's Bridge House, Responsibility House. Like, the facilities are still open. But again, we have such a surge in numbers of people wanting to get off the street and get into a safer environment and start getting some of their medical needs met, that it does present a challenge sometimes for people to get in now. It's like numbers are up as far as enrollment goes. I just wish that the same was for outcomes, and I mean, if you said it several times, like the number one thing for people to remember is that they're not alone. There is a way to get help. And it brings us back around to kind of the original point of our opening of our conversation, I think, where, it's all about opening dialogue with people and asking for help, or asking people, more importantly, asking people if they need help.
Right.
And trying to deliver that to them, in the best way possible.
So if someone is watching this and they have a loved one that they feel like maybe their pandemic drinking has turned into something that's maybe they're doing as soon as they wake up in the morning and throughout the day and spending what little they have, to cope. What's the best thing for them to do? Because I feel like I have folks reach out to me and ask, like, well, what do I do? I just want to help them. What do I do?
Well, you can get an evaluation, from someone like myself who like this is what I deal with. And I just did two of them in the past 2 days where people called me up and, we talked. They gave me their story. I took their history. I interviewed them for about an hour or so and got as much information as I could with them. I also like to back up my clinical opinion with certain tests that I administer to people. So it's not just my opinion. I have a tool that measures for me as well. I compare the two and I kind of give them, hey, look, this is what I think. That was my first job when I was a counselor, actual like an intern, not, and then later a counselor, not just a tech at the hospital. And so any rehab facility can do this for you as well. Like you can go to Odyssey House, you can go to Bridge House, you can go to Oxford House, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you can ask them, look, I need a substance abuse evaluation. Like this, I think that I'm drinking, 12 White Claws a day. What do you think's my problem? And find out what people say and get that opinion. Because sometimes, it might not be what you're doing, so to speak. Like maybe you are having a glass of wine a day, 3-4 ounces of wine. That's not so bad. But maybe the person watching you having the glass of wine a day has some bad experiences with alcoholism and is like, hey, man, I think you should,
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, because, look, like you brought up the term pandemic drinking. It happened I'm not an alcoholic or an addict. Everybody had a drink when this thing hit because it was kind of that fictional end of the world. We were all like, oh, my God, now what? And so that's dropped off for many people. The initial shock is gone, but for some people, it's not. So getting that evaluation is good because, like I said, it could be your problem. It could be someone else's problem. And if it turns out it's not your problem, you can then send your friend to someone like me and say, well, I think you need to go get evaluated for anxiety, man, or whatever the case might be. So counselors do evaluations all the time. Facilities do them as well. I would tell you the best evaluation, and this is just my opinion, is the fact behind it. But I think counselors such as myself give really good evaluations because I have no vested interest in if you're going to continue at my facility. And what I mean is a lot of times facilities are like, oh, yeah, I think you need to come to treatment. It might not exactly be true, And I'm not trying to say that. Certainly we at Odyssey House do not do that. But I'm just saying that I've been in this business a long time, 16 years. I've seen these things happen. But if you find a good neutral party who can give you a good opinion, and they have some experience, like get a counselor who's been around for a while that knows what they're talking about. Make sure what you're getting evaluated on is their specialty. Like I wouldn't go to a trauma counselor to get a substance abuse evaluation, just like you shouldn't come to me for a trauma eval.
Right.
If you have trauma, I'm gonna send you to a specialist. If you have substance abuse problems, come to me because that's my bread and butter. That's what I do, But I think that's the best thing that you can do is get on to the internet. And Psychology Today is where I have my profile. They have many, many other counselors there. Facebook has lots of groups for counselors, and mostly they're counselors only groups, but you can still find out information from them. With the internet, we can get pretty much anything we need. And if you don't know, like if you don't have access to that, go to a hospital and you can get information from now. Bringing us back to suicide, one of the best things you can do is call the suicide hotline. If you don't have that 1-800 number, you can always call 911 and, hey guys, look, I don't feel safe. This is how I'm feeling. I'm really serious. Could you please get me the help I need? They're not going to come and arrest you. They're going to come and pick you up. They're going to take you to an ER. You're going to meet a psychiatrist like Dr. Holly. And they're going to talk to you and they're going to determine, do you need to go to the next step and get some help, or can we just refer you out to a counselor or something? And, I actually had to go through that process with a friend of mine recently who I was concerned for his safety, and he was amenable to me calling, bringing him to the hospital and doing what needed to be done. And all it's, again, back to where we started, all it takes is having that conversation, not judging anybody, and offering help and being respectful if they don't want help, and just making it available to people. And I think that's the best things you can do. If you have questions about what's going on with you, well, then there's probably something going on with you, right? I mean,
Right.
like, otherwise you wouldn't be like, man, is this really normal for me to be like, well, if it was, probably wouldn't be wondering that,
Right. And like you said, worst case, you just go get an evaluation and you find out that you're doing okay, that what you're doing is working, and you just got to get through it. But
Yeah.
you need more than you're in the room or virtual room with someone who can help you get those services.
Absolutely, man. I mean, like there's too much help and too many programs and too much accessibility, really. Like nowadays, I mean, if you have, a phone in your pocket, you've got the Library of Alexandria at hand. I mean, like you have everything you ever needed to know at your fingertips. And I don't care who you are. Everybody has a phone nowadays. I know people who can't afford food, but they pay for their phone. It's just kind of like
or you can get a few programs because they want to keep it safe.
Yeah, and I mean, so the accessibility is there. It's just like some people, it's the stigma of it, and that goes for substance abuse too. And then it's also just the ignorance of truly not knowing. That is what I mean by ignorant here. Of where do I go for help? Is there help for what's going on with me? And being willing to maybe get that feedback, because it's one thing to go ask for help. It's another thing to listen to what help tells you. And don't tell help. And I know as a healthcare worker in our field, this. Don't tell help how to help you. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of like, hey, I'm drowning. Would you throw me a rope? Well, I've got this raft. No. It must be a rope. Well, you're going to drown then, pal. And so it's one of those things that in this particular field of mental health, we run into a lot. As people come and seek out for help, and then you tell them, hey, man, I think this is your problem. And they're like, no. Okay.
Well, change is uncomfortable, right? I mean, that's part of the process of getting help is changing whatever is going on for you in that moment. And, the pandemic's been going on for a while now, for like 6 months. So at this point, whatever you're doing is a habit, and is as unhealthy as it may be, it's how your brain has learned to function.
Sure.
And so any type of change from that is going to be uncomfortable, even if it's a good change. That's something we talk about a lot in therapy and in integrative psychiatry. I talk about that, is that any type of behavior change or, we've talked in other episodes about neuroplasticity, making those new connections in your brain, that's growth. And, remember when you're a kid, those growing pains, it's hard. It's not necessarily easy. So even if you've come out of a rehab facility and you're on a path to recovery, not every step is going to be a good one. Like some of those steps are going to be painful and hard and difficult because you're doing something new and your brain wants to go back to what you were doing before because that was way easier.
Sure.
But not necessarily the best choice.
Yeah. And I preach that almost daily. Studying brain activity and learning about neurotransmitters and a reward system and stuff like that. And drug addiction is one of the things I'm very interested in, even as a counselor. And I talk to my clients about that all the time. Like it's literally so much easier to stay in active addiction than it is to get a job and pay the bills and be responsible to your probation officer, or just go home every night and do homework with your kid. Whatever your life is about, it's so much easier to take a shortcut, a chemical shortcut. And even if it's not drugs, that's just behaviorally speaking, the reinforcement's there. We learn what works, and that's what we want to do. And that is so hard to break once it sets in for anybody, drug addict or not. It's really one of those things that it takes a lot. And when you start to try to do that, it is unpleasant. You know what I mean? Like there's no reward. It's kind of like I could be eating a donut right now and be so happy. Instead, I'm eating kale. You know what I mean? But give it 6 months. I like kale, but give it 6. But I like donuts too. I mean, look at me. They're so delicious. But like give it 6 months and kale tastes delicious. You know what I mean? And that's kind of the thing. It's getting your brain used to and your body used to what it is that you're trying to do, and making that adjustment to occur. And it's a difficult process for a lot of people, but once you are on that train, it's like dieting. Once you really get into it, you can't wait to go home and work out. You get the burst of energy afterwards and this and that. You weren't getting that burst of energy when you first started. You were like, my God, why am I on this friggin' treadmill right now? It's 8 o'clock at night. I just want to watch TV on my couch. That's why you're on a treadmill. But now, I mean, I can say this for myself. Like my wife and I, we found ourselves baking bread and, doing all this stuff when the pandemic hit. And it's like, my God, we gained 19 pounds from COVID, So now we're trimming that down, and it's become every day. Well, are you going to work out? Because I'm going to work out. You go first, and I'm going to go. And And so we can't wait to do it now. You know what I mean? The reward is there. We're changing the neural pathway, as you put it, and increasing the reinforcement for what it is we're doing. And in short, for those of you who don't speak neurobiology, is we're building new habits, and they're awesome. And that's kind of the biggest agent of change that is also the hardest to hurdle, is getting into those new habits and finding a way to enjoy that your life is going to be different now. But once it happens, it's all over with. Like, I know people have been sober for 20 years and they won't change anything because their real life has become so rewarding.
Right. Those relationships are back and they're living their best lives. And
sure. Absolutely. And make no mistake though, it is easy to go back to donuts on your couch, like, because that pathway is still there. I can't wait to be used again in the future. Just like for the alcoholic, you can't wait to drink again,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, changing things is, it's definitely well worth doing, and I think has a big bearing on people's turnouts with drug addiction, suicide, accepting feedback, working in the mental health profession, stuff like that. And by that, I mean them working with us, so.
Right. So for folks who are thinking like maybe they want to make a change, whether it be with substances or behavior, and are thinking like, hey, this Adam looks like a cool dude, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Well, I've got a phone number. It's 504-434-7655. There it is on the bottom of your screen. That's also my my email right there, Adam Rivas LPC at mentalfitnessllc.net. And you can find me. I'm also on Psychology Today. I didn't have the URL to send over, but you can get on Psychology Today, Google up my name, and you'll find me. I'm based out of New Orleans. I'm certified in telehealth, so I can do this with you, the computer, until we are in a situation where we don't need to wear masks anymore. I can also meet with people if I absolutely have to, don't want to. But I'm out there, and I'm fairly well known in New Orleans. I've been doing this for a while, and happy to help out, in any way I can. And if I'm not the right counselor for you, I'll find the right counselor for you. I always do that initial screening process with people where it's like, hey, tell me about your problems before you give me any money. Like, let me hear what's going on, because if I'm not your guy, I want to find you your guy or your lady, because I might not be that person, and there's no point in me sitting down and doing this with you if I'm not going to help you.
Right.
So,
right. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. So, folks, if you're interested in more episodes, check out my website, darwellnessnola.com. Or if you're checking this out on YouTube, please subscribe and like so I can get more episodes out to people. And thanks everyone for joining us today. Please, again, I'm just going to pull up the number for the suicide prevention hotline there. It is Suicide Prevention Day. I really want folks who are maybe feeling alone to know that they're not alone, and to know that you can reach out and talk to someone. Reach out to me, reach out to Adam, reach out to a friend, and get some help. We love you. We want you to stay safe. And thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks, Adam.
Hey, thank you very much. Anytime. I was happy to be here.
All right.